Hi, I'm Rigger. This is You Were Right, and let's go through some superpowers, shall we? Kind of. Before all that though, be sure to like the video if you like it, share it if you guys would like it, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and subscribe if you want to see more. I'm trying to see how fast I can do that. Now, for clarification, this isn't a hyper-focused single idea about Yang's semblance. Instead, just for fun, I thought we'd go through some options. This might be something I revisit later, or coming up with more options. But for now, I have a few ideas and I thought let's just go through them. Semblances are interesting. For some characters, they're essential to who they are and their fighting style. We know they can evolve, but ever since we've seen Ren's development, it's really opened up the variety of possibilities that we know they're willing to touch on and discuss. Rather than just adding to the existing power, like the effect becomes stronger or faster or lasts longer, we can pivot into thematically related secondary powers. From hiding emotions to seeing emotions, you know. That pivot is great, and we see it also has secondary effects, like, you know, being able to sense emotions in the distance. So now that we know that, we can sort of have a broader talk about what other people's developments could possibly be. Yang is my first target here because her semblance has always been annoying. Not that it's bad, it's that it's been altered and then unused and then misunderstood. There was a long period there where she just didn't use it, simply because they weren't sure what they wanted to do with it. And I know you're gonna defend it like, oh no, she's only supposed to use it, you know, that was her lesson that she was learning, was not to use it, but it really felt like they were just trying to avoid her using it as well. But nowadays, Yang is back to using it again. Only as a last-ditch effort though. And somewhat that again ties to her lesson about not relying on it, but it also seems she's still against using it at opportune moments and only really uses it at the end of a fight, just to finish things off. Which again, somewhat falls in line with her teachings, but it means giving her something else or something expanded on that power could be useful. Something else she can use. Something she can use more freely, or use more often, or be more interesting, that isn't just burning to hit the last punch of a fight. So, let's go through a few options. I'll save one for last that I actually have some story ideas for as well. Otherwise, these are in no particular order. First up, Flame On. Yeah, like a lot of powers, this is basically something that's been done before by a lot of people. A flame body is nothing new, and this one isn't tied so much to her character arc so much it is useful for the story. By which I mean, it's not because of some emotional realization or something like that, it's more because it's something we can use. Though, if you wanted a story reason for it, we can tie it to, like, freedom, being free and fighting back, maybe. That's the type of thing that would have been perfect to activate here. To start her using burn to try and wrestle out of these arms, but strength isn't enough. She won't quit, she won't stop fighting with all her might, and then something serious or dangerous starts happening and she has to get out of here, and she can't break out, and she needs to save someone or something, and then suddenly the flames from her hair spread down, cover her body and her arms, burning away the hands holding her, until it engulfs her completely. Again, that's just a fun reveal of how to do it. Actually, kinda neatly, this might be like the one and only instance where there's a good reason why Yang's skin and clothes don't just burn off when she gets engulfed in flames, because it would be sitting on her aura. And if she has no aura, she can't make flames, so it all lines up. Functionally, you might think this doesn't get her much. Her punches are already explosive with her weapons, so throwing fireballs is redundant, and having flaming punches is redundant and removes the purpose of Ambasilica, and it takes away from sort of what she already has. Not wrong, but I wouldn't have her throw fireballs. Obviously, escaping grabs is nice, and burning obstacles is nice. The full body flame distinguishes her from Cinder, who has a much more controlled flame look, but it was another part of this which can be useful, and that's flight. Combating flying people like Cinder is always really annoying, but by the same notion you have to be very careful when you give your main characters and heroes flying, because then things become very easy sometimes. This is how you could balance it out. Cinder is a maiden and can fly forever, even once her aura is broken. Yang's will literally burn out, so having her ability to fly run out, taking a big hit in the air or just for too long and her aura shatters and she falls, is good. It's a good counter. This is where we hopefully remember landing strategies, you know, which sometimes the show seems to conveniently forget, but whatever. We'll also make Yang fly like a missile though, not controlled hovering, but like a human fireball. Not all the controls Cinder has, just bursts in a direction and streaking through the sky. Like, you know, not, she couldn't change direction once she flies, but it's, you know, it's that constant forward motion. There's like that jetting forward. She can't just hover around and float. She's a human fireball. But that becomes very useful for ground-based combat, basically able to flame charge into combat and then start punching. Also, the option to fly straight up in the air and then rain down shots from her gauntlets on the battlefield is also pretty cool. Again, this is just a very usual, like, idea for what her power can be. They're not in any order, this is just a basic one. I don't love it, but, you know, I thought we'd cover it since we're here. I am concerned, however, how it might look in RWBY's animation, or if it'd get any play at all, or if it'd just be deemed also too much work to animate her and use, like, you know, a full flame. It might just be back to her using it when absolutely necessary then, because they don't want to constantly be putting that in there, because it might look bad or be very hard to animate, or both. So, moving on. Next up, Mirror Force. This would be taking the concept of her absorbing damage to dish it back to the next level, having Yang gain the ability to be an Uno reverse card, her aura literally being able to absorb an attack and mirror it back at the attacker. So if Cinder did throw a fireball at her, it'd rebound straight back at Cinder. It gets tricky with bullets though, and how you would also apply it from hand-to-hand combat. Do aura swords and fists appear and strike back at you out of her? That'd be kinda cool, I guess. It'd be hard to animate though and kinda messy, but very practical, and you could see her using it, and it could lead to very dramatic moments of her absorbing a massive blow that would have killed someone else, like, jump in front of the person about to take the hit, reflecting it back, but breaking her aura right after, buying them time, but you get that proper, oh my god, someone's gonna die moment. Again, it's fun, but the technicalities could be weird. You might be able to do some fun combos with people as well if you could coordinate bouncing friendly attacks off her and redirecting them to unsuspecting enemies or something. Another quick one. Next up, Ultimate Shield. But not exactly like this one, not exactly like Greed's, though similar in concept. Yang's combat is fast, fluid, and up close. This would be a trade-off, essentially combining the idea something like Blake's semblance, but she has to stay put. Basically an impervious mode that freezes her like a statue, but can tank pretty much any hit, making the trade-off that it kills her momentum, but it could save her life or others if she gets in front of people. Again, you can set it for dramatic saves, and you can focus on team-based combat because then she'll need cover coming out of it because she's stopped dead. So you could also do a dramatic moment where she is alone in a fight and has to resort to using it, and does, and saves herself, but then is stuck like that as like a statue, and the enemy, like say Tyrion, is right in her face, and he's just waiting and for her aura reserve to tick down as she holds this form. So we have to hope people get there in time to save her, or she'll unfreeze and he'll instantly kill her, so you can do a ticking clock. That could also be really fun. The next one is also just for fun, because her songs have literally referenced going Super Saiyan before. It is the reference everyone makes the first time they see her, and there are a lot of buff Yang fans out there, so we could give her a Hulk mode, a full-on Berserker Rage mode, and she can finally just become Kale. So my joke for this character image can finally come true. Abs for days. And just don't question why her clothes and stuff aren't damaged. Anyway, moving on. Next up is one that has been used pretty effectively from time to time in different stories, and again it's taken from the concept of her taking something in and dishing it back out, but it's semblance absorption. Something we have hinted on with Marcus Black as something that could sort of be possible for some semblances, but not quite as evil as his version. For those keeping track at home, yeah, it's turning Yang into Rogue, allowing her, probably by touch, to borrow someone's semblance for a short period of time. Imagine the start of a battle, she touches RWBY's shoulder and then a flaming petal burst fires forward, again, a Yang fireball, and she comes out of it, uppercutting. Or do some of her boxing things and suddenly she shadow clones like Blake. It ties thematically to her trusting her team more and working together with others, not being so headstrong and so willing to rush headlong into battle. It's taking time and planning and working with others. Literally able to take in things from those around you. You can also balance this out saying that while she's doing this, the person she's borrowed it from can't use their semblance. Not to mention, we have also established semblances that mimic things. We did that with Velvet, although this is again a different version. But putting something like touch for this power in helps limit it, and also lets Yang play some cool little tricks, like punching a bad guy, and then as he goes to fight back, using their semblance that she just stole from him against them. It'd be a great gotcha mode for someone like Tyrion, right? She comes up and punches him, and he goes ooh and tries to punch her back, and she blocks it, and then goes through his aura using his semblance because she's already up close and he's not expecting it. Cool things like that. It could be a way to, get some cool animations on Yang, but using sort of assets they sort of already have or can tweak, and their semblances and drawings or styles that they're used to using a lot more. So, they can be incorporated more into the combat consistently rather than, a power that they don't want to keep, incorporating into scenes because it's too hard to make. I will say all the ones so far have been somewhat combat-based, right? Like, they're all fighting stuff. But it might be something like Ren has. It might be useful to give her something non-combat based so she can find more reasons to use it outside of just fights, a reason to do something else. I will say, from my end at least, I found it a bit hard though to thematically come up with stuff that applies, along that logic chain of like her story arcs and stuff and be a non-combat semblance. One idea I had is sort of something like Ren's semblance, but not so strong and not used for like hiding from Grimm, but it's literal emotional manipulation, being able to alter to a degree someone's emotional state around you. It's an extension of her learning to need to control her own emotions in her story arc, you know, and then she can then control others. Unfortunately, you run into some real issues with that kind of power. In a fight, it'd be useful to make your enemies calm or uneasy or sad and get the upper hand, but you run into issues like real moral questions, especially when that's on a good guy, like when it's okay to use that power, and if she's doing it to people when they make other decisions. Is she making RWBY more happy to get her way? Is she making, you know, so-and-so more sad to manipulate them? Is she making Blake fall in love with her, right? Just awkward stuff that's annoying to have to write around, and you don't really want to put it in there, and you get some weird situations, so I'd be against giving her a power like that. Another one, though, that might be one of my favorites is creating light. She literally could produce light, not just heat, but light. You might make fun of that power, like the guy who glows in Sky High, but I actually like this a lot. Taking inspiration from lines in her song about like comparing herself to the sun, and, you know, the idea of the good guys being literal lights in the darkness, you know, RWBY is the spark. If Yang can literally produce light, and it's an actual super useful power, even in combat, because you can blind people, making yourself a human flashbang. Usually I wouldn't bring this up, but I will because it's sort of relevant here. A little while ago, I got struck by an urge I get sometimes to just make a character, and I wrote down my first Will RWBY OC that I put some sort of time and thought into. I just don't really have a use for them, but I just wanted to make a character. That gets me sometimes. I just like making characters. I have no real use for that character, I just like it, and this was their semblance. If you'd for some reason like to hear about that character, I guess let me know and I can try and think of a video to do with it for some reason, I guess. I can't draw, so there'd be no visuals for you, but yeah, hate it if you want, but I think making light is actually super cool and interesting, especially if you can control the intensity of it. Also, there's a trade-off that is built into it on purpose. If you flare a blinding light that affects people around you, it also affects your team, so you need to be careful when you use it. But if you're hand-to-hand with Yang and you're about to try and block her and fight her and suddenly everything goes white like a flashbang, and then she just starts hitting you while you're completely defenseless and disorientated, you lose. It's really useful. It also makes a fun little parallel to RWBY, as both sisters can then make their own bright lights, only with different effects. It also means they don't need to walk around with their scrolls in their hands all the time when they're in the dark, so you can, you know, keep your weapons up, because Yang can act as a soft light. And, you know, you can do little jokes about, you know, she's the light in Blake's life or something, especially since Blake has a lot of dark theming, you know, the cat things and the shadows and, you know, just in general her themes. Only issue I can see, really, though, is having to utilize bright bursts of light while fighting. In a practical sense, you might give your audience seizures, and that's an issue. So, we'd have to be aware of that. Her constantly flashing bright white in the middle of fight scenes might, yeah, not be good. One idea that I did have is sort of a bit hard to explain. It's called, like, Soul Bond or Together Forever, something like that. Cheesy name. The idea is it's built around Yang's abandonment issues, you know. It's sort of an inverse to what Raven can do as well. Obviously, you know, their semblances aren't hereditary, it's not like an actual, like, counter to it, it's just in thematics. Because we all know Yang has abandonment issues, you know. Raven left her, Summer didn't come back, and then there was Blake leaving, like all these things. So she has that issue, and it's been evident if you look at some of her behaviors. So the idea would be something kind of like force pull, like a force power. You can only use it on people, you know, it's not like Pyrrha's magnetism, although again, that only works on metal, but this would be, yeah, like the ability to move people or move them towards you. And you might think that's sort of a random idea, but hear me out. It's a literal interpretation of her not wanting people to leave, but also it's very useful in combat and in situations, because if you see someone who's about to get hit, you can pull them and, like, you know, pull a teammate and the person will miss. Even though they won't be expecting it, you could save someone. It also means that for someone who's a close combat person like Yang, that your targets can't run from you, and you could do super awesome combos like punching someone really hard so they fly backwards, and then while they're flying backwards, yank them back towards you again and hit them again, you know, like yo-yo them in and out. You could do some really cool stuff like that. And yeah, if someone tries to run away, you can pull them back. Obviously that then makes an issue that if you know, someone is trying to run away, if we want a bad guy to get away, then we need to have Yang's aura broken, otherwise why didn't you pull him back? Like, you know, you get some story issues sometimes you have to plan for, but it's still a cool idea for an ability. There There is the idea that you could do it like Ravens, where it only works with people she's like bonded with, or like, you know, puts markers on or something. But, you know, then it's like, well, if it's bonding with, then one, it's very close to Ravens in a weird way when they're not supposed to be hereditary, and it doesn't work on enemies then, which you could say is good for balancing, but it really reduces what you could do with the power, because, you know, you'd have someone getting beaten up, and then Yang pulls them to her, smashes them really hard till they're thrown away, pulled back, smash them again, you know, so yeah, you have someone trying to run away, and you just pull them back. Like, you could have to do some really cool stuff with it, and limiting it to just living things means that it doesn't get super crazy, and people can still get disarmed and stuff like that. Not to mention, if you want some lighthearted moments, you can use it outside of battle, like, you know, someone says something snappy to her or something, you know, like a chide remark, and she pulls them over and be like, say it to my face, or something funny, like RWBY makes a joke and tries to run away, and like Yang pulls her back, and you can have their semblances fight maybe, or although with how her semblances explain, maybe not, but you get the idea. Or something sweet like pulling in a romantic partner or something. Like, you could do cool stuff outside of combat with it if you wanted to, you know, just utilize it in more everyday things, which is something I'm always a fan of. In just that if you were living with a superpower, you would find a way to just use it for normal life. It's just sort of how your life would be, wouldn't it? So, anyway. And the last one up is one I sort of had some more story for. It's kind of the idea that Yang is a tank, right? She's always been that, and she's gone through emotional arcs. She was the rock of the team you could always rely on. She was the base, she was the strength, and she was broken. Not just physically, but emotionally, and then made that long climb back up to be solid again, but now more open to emotions and, you know, more thoughtful about her combat, those sort of things. So there's sort of two versions of this. You'll see what I mean. What I'd like to do is combine that idea of her character with the idea of taking damage powering her up. Now, it's always been sort of implied, I guess, that it's her aura, right? Like, her aura takes hits, and that powers her up physically. And obviously her aura can be broken with enough hits. But it would be interesting if it applied to when her aura was down. Not broken. If her aura is broken, she can't use a semblance. But what I mean is, if her aura shield wasn't up and you broke her nose, would activating it then turn that damage into power, or does it have to actually land and hit her aura? Which I feel like it does have to, but it'd be interesting if it didn't. I sort of would like to play with the idea that it doesn't have to, it still feeds into her strength. That's not their power, that's just like a baseline for it, because it'd be cooler if it worked that way for this idea, although it can work a different way. But either way, the base idea of this power is that she can take damage for, or maybe from, other people. It could be by an aura link, or by touch maybe, if depending how you want to play it. Perhaps she could redirect damage to herself. Now again, you could do several versions of this as well, like how you want to play it. One is she directs incoming damage directly, so you punch RWBY and the aura link means it works as if you punched Yang and RWBY is fine, and it powers up Yang because it fuels into her semblance as if you punched her, and RWBY is fine, but it also damages Yang's aura reserve because it's like she took a hit. Or the other version of this is that she literally can take damage from people, probably by touch. Meaning, if you broke your foot, she can walk up and touch you and heal you, but it breaks her foot. Literally removing damage from you and taking it, letting her literally tank damage for people. And, like I said, if it worked in the way I described earlier, that it bypassed her aura but still hurts her and feeds into her damage output, letting her literally take damage for other people and powering herself up with it for burning. Again, technicalities would be important, it probably wouldn't work that way, it was just an idea, but it means you could get knocked down and injured, and Yang could take the damage away from you, letting you recover faster and powering herself up at the same time. It also means that her aura will go down faster as her injuries do start stacking and taking effect on her body. I know Jean is the healer, that's his role, and you sort of go, oh, you don't want to double them up, but again, they can be split apart, and also that's sort of the difference, is Jean's power lets your aura be boosted, and that heals you faster, but it's not, you know, super fast. Yang's here would be basically instant, but there's a hefty price to pay. It works to get people back in the fight or running away. Unfortunately, if Yang gets this power, she's gonna die. Like, I really like this power, you can do emotional things with it and cool stuff for the story where she heals people and people bond over that and she has to, you know, knowingly take damage that's gonna hurt her. These are all really cool things you can play with, but this story ends with her dying if she gets that power. That's just how it works. Obviously, she can't die till the end, we have a show to do, but if she gets that power, you know as well as I do that the ending is she uses it to save someone's life, RWBY or Blake. They'd take a mortal wound that they can't recover from, and that's like the cliffhanger for the episode, that this main character is actually dead, and we're like in the final season, so it can actually happen. But then teary-eyed, Yang uses this ability, saving their life, and the injury starts manifesting on herself, say it's Blake, And Blake comes to crying, realizing what's happening, begging Yang to stop. Please don't do this. They share a final moment. Yang turns this into one very last massive attack, channeling all that injury enough to kill someone into an attack, into one big burn, bursts the bad guy, wins, and dies. And it's all a big build for a very sad and touching ending. It's sort of how that story kind of has to go. Because see, if it were me, I'd say she gains this power, this evolution, again, out of combat, by fully going into the Bumblebee thing. Literally freeing herself emotionally up to other people, and it's in full swing. That translates into the power to literally take on the burdens and pains of others and, share it. Creating this literal soul bond with someone lets her create the power to bond souls, to, link auras or, bond as people and take one onto the other. It also literally has that thing that the strong character dies in the end, but they die in a strong way, refusing to break and have that last big moment that just works well as a narrative. It's not the exact example I'd go for, but someone like Buccaneer comes to mind, even though he's not as important of a character. But that's all for now. There's a chance they literally don't evolve Yang Semblance either, which is fine, I guess. I just wish she got some more play and more things to do with it. This was just a fun thing to do, just talking it over and throwing out options. Obviously, a lot of these are based on real superpowers because a lot of powers have been done before. It's pretty hard to be completely original, so you'll find something that's like someone else. That being said, there literally could also be part 2 of this. I'd be interested in doing it again, if I can, come up with more ideas, or you guys have some you want to share. And that also, I'd like to do this for some other characters. It's fun to think about. I already have one person I want to do this for in the future. But, until next time, if you ever think Yang is just a joke, remember, she literally burns you and drops bombs with her punchlines. Anyway, my name is Rigger, hope you have a wonderful day, and hope I did alright.